11375 presents the real journey of an entrepreneur, a live discussion that will help us understand the layers and failures of what it really means to live out your vision and dreams. During this series, we will talk with a number of individuals who have made the leap in the areas of finance, business consulting, real estate development, mental wellness, and as an author. We will also discuss the importance of managing our finance and the importance of collaborating with others to meet success. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and Facebook at 11375. And we thank you so much in advance for supporting, watching, liking, and sharing this information on this journey. Stay tuned. There's more to come as we considering to unpack all of what it really takes to be a real entrepreneur on this journey. We thank you so much for your support and stay tuned. Well, hello there, good people. Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope that you had a wonderful, wonderful Thursday and that you are remaining safe, sane, and hopeful through all this process. I am very grateful that you are joining us this evening during this time and space. So, Welcome. My name is Anita Pierce, and for those who are joining for the first time, I am the principal owner of 11375. We are your business social strategist that helps a number of organizations through business consulting, through strategy, and also through education. I have had the good pleasure of working in my current space for approximately the past 5 years, but have really focused on developing and scaling a business over the last 2.5 years. So there's a lot of things that I'm doing this year. Obviously, for all of us who are in this space, we are being challenged as entrepreneurs. So I wanted to find a variety of different ways where we can connect and to be able to have wonderful and real conversations about what it really means to be an entrepreneur. So I am excited because we have another wonderful guest who has will be sharing her journey as a serial entrepreneur. So I know you all are really curious about what that looks like. So I won't keep you too long with me, but I wanted to just share just a few practical tips as we are all trying to lead and manage as entrepreneurs during these turbulent times. And one of the things that I can think about, just to share, there are really four, maybe five areas, but I'll only cover four at this time that I think that you can continue to lead your business with courage. And if you have team members and if you have business collaborators that you're working with and partners, there are four ways. The first area to lead with courage, in my opinion, is with your team. The second, in my opinion, is within your business operations and strategy. And the third is through collaborations and partnerships. And the fourth is with your clients. One of the things that I recognize and come to have really learned, particularly in this space that we're in, is the importance of communicating and being transparent. And sometimes as leaders, we don't have, the truth is, we don't have all the answers. But the more that we are communicating and sharing our personal experiences with your team, within your business operations, and collaborating with others, it becomes like you're closing the gap and finding the solutions that and to the answers that you don't know. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about just briefly is about your business operations. When you are considering these times, financial, how you communicate with your clients, whether you need to create systems to help you to move forward, taking an honest look. If you have a business plan, well, you should have a business plan. To be able to decide what you will need to adjust, tweak, restructure during this time so that you're able to remain competitive for the future. So really taking a look at your overall business strategy during the holidays. Most of us are going to have some time, some downtime to just really rethink about how we are going to show up in 2021. Because whether we like it or not, 2020 didn't agree with the most of us, but the calendar and the time will still turn. So we want to take just a little bit of time, one, to refresh, recharge, but to also think about how you are going to show up in 2021, because it's definitely coming. We just have to decide how we're going to be seen during that time. So I hope those little tidbits were helpful. More to come. There are plans that I will be conducting a boot camp. I actually had one starting obviously in person earlier this year, and looking to continue the boot camp for entrepreneurs in 2021. So please stay tuned if you like this series. There'll be more to come, but we are going to be having our last series, event of this series on Monday, and then we will bring it back again in the new year. So I hope you're enjoying. Stay tuned, stay locked. And now, because it's enough of me, it's all about my next guest, and we are going to unpack all of the dopeness. So I get to share with you because I know many of you know her personally. That's okay, but now she's my new virtual best friend, so I will claim that. Miss Patrice West is a native New Yorker. No, we don't fake it when we come from the city. We are natives, and who currently resides in Maryland. She holds a Bachelor of Science Degree in Marketing from the State University of New York College of Oswego, and a Master's of Business Administration degree from the Case Western Reserve University in Ohio, where she concentrated in marketing and entrepreneurial studies. So we got someone who has the clear background, and she's always had a passion for entrepreneurship. Throughout her career, she would venture into various entrepreneurial endeavors while simultaneously working full-time in corporate positions. And that's what truly most of us do. We have the vision, but sometimes we also have to supplement our dreams by while working for someone else. So we'll unpack that this evening. And while in her mid-30s, she founded the Harlem Tea Room, a neighborhood cafe that gained national exposure. The restaurant was featured in publications and periodicals such as the Old Magazine, Black Enterprise, the New York Times, the Daily News, Crains New York, and the National Geographic Traveler. She was also recognized by the Network Journal as one of their 40 Under 40 honorees. In 2011, she co-founded Mamas on the Run, Inc., an apparel company that specialized in apparel for mother runners and family supporters of these runners. These businesses were short-lived, but many valuable business lessons were learned. Currently, Patrice has been working in corporate America as a full-time marketing specialist for a global corporation. And in her spare time, she continues to plan for future entrepreneurial ventures, as she describes herself as a serial entrepreneur. Patrice currently enjoys reading, traveling, and spending time with family and friends, and is the proud mom of 3 girls. She attributes all of her success to her strong faith in God and his plan on her life. So, hey, Patrice.
Hello. Hi.
How are
Good
you?
evening. I'm good. Actually, hearing you go over that, I was like, is that me? Okay. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks
ma'am.
for having me.
No, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to share your amazing journey. I actually myself had an opportunity to um, go to the Harlem Tea Room when it was up and running, and it was a pioneer during that time. Your vision was very large and wide. So I actually miss it. I know that, maybe it will come back again, but you'll describe all of that for us. So, what don't we know about Patrice that's outlined within this bio that you shared?
Hmm. Well, one, I would say um, one of the things throughout my life that has been consistent is that I haven't let fear hold me back.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people, especially some people who aspire to be entrepreneurs, are quick to say, what if it doesn't work? What if, what if? And I've just always taken the road that I'll figure it out, or
Hmm.
I'm going to try it, or you never know until you try it. And one of the things for me with the Harlem Tea Room, I always share this story that it wasn't the fear of doing, it was the fear of not doing. And I always say that, I said to myself, I don't want to wake up one day and be 80 years old, God willing, and say, I always wanted to open this tea cafe. So it was the fear of thinking like, if I put this off, or if I think of every reason why I shouldn't, it may never happen. And so it
Mhm.
actually was the fear of not doing.
Wow. So, fear. You mentioned fear. Can I unpack that a little bit with you? Because
Sure.
oftentimes we it expresses itself, and I know for me, because I can think about there are times when fear shows up on a it exposes itself regularly, especially over these past um, few weeks, because I was trying this new series, and it got to a point where my my mind was so afraid that I start saying like, what is, why am I like, what is it that I don't want to share or express? Like, why am I doubting myself? Like, did that ever show up like during your process early on?
I would have to say with the tea room, actually, it didn't. One of the things, like, one of the things about me is when I get something in my head and I'm convicted about it,
Mhm.
I'm going full steam ahead.
Mm,
And truthfully, some things may not be figured out, but once I have it in my head, there's that drive. One thing I would say though about the fear is that there is a balance. I don't say to people, go for it and, you know, um, do something that's not smart, or go, risk your whole house, put your house up. Like you have to have a plan. I
mm,
say go for it, and, don't let the fear hold you back. But the other thing that I think people should be mindful of is to really take a step back and think, what's the worst thing that could happen? Really, what's the worst thing that could happen? You fail, you fail by whose standards?
mm.
Okay, one thing that could happen is, depending on what your venture is, you can lose money. Okay, so, but don't lose more money than you can afford to lose. So that, there's always that chance. I think everything we do in life, you take a chance, and it's a risk.
And so that's really great. For me, to really think about understanding the risk that I'm taking. So I received that, and thank you for that. Um,
Yeah, again, like I said, put that thought in your, what's the worst thing that could happen? If you have a particular thing that you're pursuing, think about what the good could happen if you, continue to pursue it. So I would say it's the balance.
Great. And so, what was your initial reason for starting the tea room?
So my family is originally from Harlem. And after graduating with my MBA, I had gone to school in Ohio. I returned to New York. I was working for a major corporation, a financial services company, actually downtown in the financial district. And when I moved back to the neighborhood, I was renting an apartment. And every day, so Harlem, for those that are familiar, has just gone through various changes. And this was at the beginning of what they call the gentrification period. So I would take the subway downtown to work, and every day I would come home and I would just see these cranes, and I would see these builders chiseling. And this was the new Harlem coming, and they were building things. And I remember earlier on, when I first returned, I said to myself, in 5 years, I want to open up a cafe.
Mm,
I want to open up a comfortable neighborhood spot. I didn't call it a restaurant in the beginning. I called it a cafe. I didn't consider myself full on restaurant. I wasn't looking to serve fried chicken and, our soul food. I wanted salad, soup. One of the things that I found was that at that time, people, you had to go further downtown for those things. You
mm,
had to go further downtown for healthier foods. Also, some of the, and no disrespect to some of the staples that are there, not by, any means. I work downtown. A lot of times after work, I would go to places, maybe Midtown or happy hours. And, I said, why am I patronizing? I believe in my community. I want to go to local places, but I also want to go to nice places, nice decor, nice atmosphere. And so I first said to myself, in 5 years, I'm going to open this cafe. And I said to myself, in that 5 years, so where did five come from? Five was a number that I picked. I said, well, that will give me time to save. That will give me time to work on a business plan and just get my plan together. Well, as I mentioned, construction to the left, construction to the right. And truthfully, one day I got off the subway. I saw this massive building coming up. And I said to myself, I can't wait 5 years.
Mm.
Five years may not wait for me. They're building. It might be too late to get in. And it was from that moment that I just was so focused on, I need to make this happen now. And hence, then I started with my business plan. I started working, you know, eyeing different places in the neighborhood. But that was the beginning of it. And one of the things I recall in my business plan, I said that I wanted people to feel like they were having tea in their living room.
Mhm.
I wanted them to have this comfy, cozy place to come to. Where did the tea part come from? The tea part came from that as a little girl, in Harlem, I used to sit with my grandmother, and she would have coffee. I was too young to have coffee. So she would give me tea, and she would put carnation milk in it. And I would stir it up. I thought I was having coffee, but it was tea. And that was the early stage of my love for tea uh, beginning, and then it continued through my adulthood. But it also, the idea of the tea room was also paying homage, to my family who have been there for years.
Wow. Um, Thank you. There was a couple of things that as I'm listening, that you emphasized, that maybe often overlooked. One, you had a vision, right, for what it is that you wanted to do. And then the other thing that I took note of is that you actually wrote it out in a business plan. Would you explain, just briefly, what your process was to write out this business plan and to think about, some of the financing and whether you leased or owned the property? Would you be able to talk more about that?
Sure. So one of the things with the business plan, and I guess I was fortunate, having had a business background. My undergraduate degree was in business. I had classes where we had to work on a business plan, and then in graduate school. But a business plan is pretty much the end to end. It's like the Bible of your business, down to first describing in detail what's your concept, down to define who are your customers, who are the customers, how are you going to then you have to define your competition. How are you going to differentiate yourself from the competitors? So in my case, opening a cafe. Well, anybody could open a cafe.
Mhm.
A cafe could open across the street from maybe where I was planning to open. So defining how you're going to differentiate yourself. A key point of a business plan is your financing. And typically you will plan out at minimum 5 years, how, income, losses, expenses. In your business plan, you have to define every detail of the startup cost of your business. And then you have to define where you're going to get the money from. And then another key thing um, that's critical to a business plan, nobody wants to think about this, is your exit strategy.
Mm.
So, in the event that your business does not succeed and you have to make decisions about it, to close, to sell it, what is your exit strategy? Um, So for me, and some people, and over the years, people have asked me to look at their business plans, to help them with their business plans. Fortunately for me, when I did it, I was so passionate and so driven. Again, once that vision, it was easy for me to write it. Like this was like my baby. I was crafting this. And the other exciting part about it, right, because it was my concept, this was not a franchise,
Mm.
was defining a lot of the decisions. They were up to me. Um, so that part, was relatively easy for me.
So you talked about, you elevated the importance of the financial projections within the business. How did you get funding to start the Harlem Tea Room?
Sure. So one thing I also want to say about the projections in particular with the type of business that I open in a cafe, truthfully, at the end of the day, some of it is guesswork,
Mm,
right? Because if you've never opened, this is a new kind of business. Again, sometimes if you have a franchise, you can see projections of other similar businesses, the volume they do, the sales. My business plan, a lot of it, you know, sad to say, was guesswork because I had to estimate. I had to say how many people are going to buy cakes,
mm,
how many people are going to buy loose tea or buy, you know, teapots. So everything was kind of just a guess based on what I was projecting.
mhm,
To answer your question about financing, so an interesting story for me, and I don't advise, I can proudly speak about it, but this is an area where I stress to people to be very careful. So one, the particular where I had the space, I had my eye on the space. I wanted the space so bad. And truthfully, the landlord initially said no to me
mm,
because I didn't have experience running a cafe restaurant. And they had an idea for another kind of business. It was a new a new building in Harlem, and so they first said no, and every now and then I would send an email. Hi, just checking in. I see the space is still vacant. So finally, when the landlord did come back and say, "All right, tell me about this idea you have. Let's meet."
mm,
One of the things he said to me is, "Okay, do you have the money for this?" And my answer was, "Yes." Well, truthfully, I didn't have all the money. I had some money, but I didn't have all the money. But
mhm,
again, me, as I said, once I have that vision, I just figured I will figure it out. One thing that I rested on was that I had really good credit. It's just
mm,
key. So I figured I could get a small business loan. So in the back of my head, that was my fallback that I would get a small business loan. I did um, send a letter to a few family members asking them to invest. I didn't get many investors. One, people didn't have it.
yeah,
Two, um, people were just a little skeptical, and I didn't take offense to it. Two relatives, actually, one of my relatives sent me a check and said, "Good luck." And that was just such a boost of confidence for me. And I acknowledge everyone doesn't have that. But the check was a fraction of really what I needed. Two things. Ultimately, I ended up, as we started the build out, because money was getting eaten up rapidly. And when
mm,
I say eaten up, it was went into construction. I took a space that it was considered a vanilla box. And
mm,
so if you're looking to open a brick and mortar, what is a vanilla box? A vanilla box is a empty space that you have to bring everything in. It was wired for water, but I had to put in a sink, a toilet. It had wires for electricity, but I had to have an electrician come and put lights, put switches. So there were costs that I didn't initially plan for in the build out. The vanilla box, I had to have floors put in. It was concrete floor. So I put so much money into the build out. I worked with a wonderful designer who did an amazing job, but she had a very expensive eye. In the end, it turned out beautifully, but it did cost money. And as money was going with my good credit, I realized, ooh, I have this credit card. It has a $10,000 limit, and I don't have $0 on it. Oh, I could go charge this. So I ended up doing something that's very risky, and that's called bootstrapping.
mm,
And pretty much I was able to finish all my builds out and get everything in place by bootstrapping. Like the furniture, I put on the credit card. The furniture, by the way, was custom made. A lot of vendors I went to, I'm like, "Do you take a credit card?" And again, because of my good credit, I end up maxing like 3 credit cards out. So fast forward, I'm close to opening, but I realize I don't have a lot of working capital. Working capital It's pretty much the money that you need operate, to operate and function. Your working capital, included in that is your rent, the telephone costs,
Mhm.
your inventory, the food. I didn't have a lot of money for working capital, and that made me nervous. So at that point, I said, well, I should go apply for the small business loan now. Well, one thing that I didn't know um, is that, yes, there are small business loans out there, but for the restaurant industry, it's very challenging to get a small business loan because the failure rate of restaurants is very high. And so um, I just hit the pavement, I just networked, and in the end, I met a gentleman. I was speaking with one of the banks, a community bank, and I was explaining to him that this is not like a wish, like I want to open this restaurant. I'm opening next week. Like,
Mm.
come see it. Come see the physical place. Come see this idea, this, vision that I have because it's happening. It's not like I'm planning it. And this is by the grace of God because one, this gentleman was a VP of a bank, of a community bank. I don't even know how I was referred to him, but he came. Like normally, you're a piece of paper, you're an application, you're a piece of paper, or you're the voice on the phone. He came, and I vividly remember him saying, "This place is gorgeous," and he said, "We have to help you." And so I ended up, after opening, securing a small business loan.
Wow. But you said you don't recommend that route though. So you
I don't. Well, here's one thing that I'll share. All along, I knew that I had one thing that if everything went belly up, I wouldn't be on the street. Not just because I had family I could go to. I had owned a piece of property in Harlem. I had purchased, and the equity, again, going back to the building that was to the left, to the right, they're building around. I built up equity very quickly. And so I knew if this just went a bust, I could always sell my place, you know, and start all over. So one of the things that I say that bootstrapping happens, and I just say to be cautious with it because you can charge things on a credit card, but eventually you have to pay for it. So I just wouldn't want people to kind of get, happy, like, oh yeah, I'll charge this. Like in my case, like I said, I was fortunate. I was able to buy the refrigerator, the freezer, the dessert case with my credit card. Um, but eventually I had to pay it back. So again, with regard to the planning that you have, if you're gonna go that route, you need to have a plan of how you are going to pay it. Because also two credit cards, unlike a small business loan, they have higher interest rates.
mm,
One of the benefits of securing a small business loan is they have very reasonable interest rates. And credit cards, um, you might be able to get a zero interest for a period of time, but eventually you're going to have to pay interest if you don't pay it off.
right. That is very, very true. So let's take a look back into what you have the business open and you have all this excitement. So you open. What did your day look like as an entrepreneur running the Harlem Tea Room? What did it look like for you?
Every day was different. Sometimes I would go in the shop, thinking like I'm going to get XYZ done. One of the things that I most enjoyed about the business was the people. It did become a community place, and friends of friends would come.
Hmm.
I love people. But also too, my background, my passion is marketing. And so one of the things I look forward to was marketing the business and planning events in the business. Um, but sometimes there wouldn't be time for that because of day-to-day business functions. For example, what if somebody calls out today? What if the dishwasher doesn't show up? Guess what? If the dishwasher doesn't show up, who's doing dishes? Me. Um, what if we get a rush? I didn't plan. You call it a rush when like a wave, like a group of 10 people walked in and maybe I'm only staffed. After a while, I learned I can't pay people to stand around. So in the beginning, again, with the business plan, I factored in X workers for X hours. This shift would need this amount of people. So I realized that during the day, because I was not in a high traffic area by foot, it was very much a destination. People would plan to come. I knew my day traffic. And after the lunch rush, it pretty much was quiet from, say 2 to 5:30. And then people would come in the evening, maybe after work. So having just two people on staff was manageable. But what if the rush happened? What if a bus pulled up, 15, 20 people, and they're excited to be here and they want tea, and nobody wants cold tea? Well, you might want cold tea for iced tea, but people who want their hot tea, they want it hot. So a typical day would be, and I had no problem. I would wear my apron. I would serve the tea. I would help where I would heat scones up, put the cream in the preserves, in the ramekins for my staff. So each day was, different.
But it sounded enjoyable, and I've experienced it, and it was very enjoyable. I can definitely attest to that. And so it was nice to know that you were not a business owner that was like standoffish, like, oh, let my employees deal with it, particularly in the restaurant business. Sometimes, as you mentioned, you have to throw your hat in. But how were you, or if you, when you were hiring your staff, like what was that process like for you? Because I don't think most people really are clear about, especially within the business that you were in, how to hire the right people for your vision and your dream. You want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And actually, before I answer that, I think it's important to touch upon. Um, I went to, so in preparing prior, when I was with this vision, I did look into resources,
Mm,
business resources prior to opening. And I was fortunate to be introduced to the Pace University Small Business Development Center.
mm,
And they offered, I'm not sure if they're in existence still, but they offered free like business consultation. So I took my business plan to the Pace Development Center, and they pair you like with a counselor. And again, it was free. Um, and one of the things he said was, I'm going to, he suggested that I wait like 2 years. And he said, you should go work for Starbucks. And I
mm,
was like, Starbucks? And one, having a business background and, definitely like lesson learned, if there was something I would do over again, there was so much value in that suggestion that he had. So I said to him, and not in a rude way, like, I don't have time to go work as like I had a corporate job. And then my free time on the weekends and evenings, I was going to different cafes, places. I would go and do reviews. They didn't know I was reviewing them. I would go with my laptop. I had a spreadsheet. I would invite girlfriends to come with me, and I would look at everything from decor. I would give ratings. Decor, how was the staff, how was the customer service, and make notes. So I felt I was doing my own research. But what he said is like he felt like if Starbucks were to be my main competitor, go work for the main competitor.
mm,
Go learn. And I didn't. I didn't take that advice.
mm.
Um, but once I opened, I realized he was right. There were so many different things about food preparation that I didn't know. And we can talk about the angels. I know I've mentioned to you about the angels, but I'll tell you, I didn't go work for Starbucks. But guess what? I hired a young lady who worked for Starbucks.
Oh,
And
wow.
she worked for them while working for me. She was a young college student, and she had two um, jobs. She worked for Starbucks and worked for me.
Wow.
And she says, Patrice, let me show you how Starbucks does it. And that's the thing. You got to be open. You have to be open. I wasn't like, I'm the boss, or I don't care how Starbucks does it. she was showing me just little tips, just preparation, things that would save time, things that would avoid waste. And so I so appreciate it. And I didn't hire her just because it just so happened that Starbucks was on her resume. But so I didn't go work for Starbucks, but I got a little some inside lessons. But to answer your question about how I um,
Hi.
selected my staff, yeah,
Mhm.
I put at the time, like Craigslist was a big thing to um, get applicants, and
Mhm.
I would put, and it was cheap, it was like $10 or something. Whenever I posted on Craigslist, I would get a slew of resumes,
Mm.
all kind of resumes, all kind of ages of people. And I have to say, my initial um, target was young college students. I
Mm.
felt like they were um, driven. They wanted the tips. That's one thing, like, and I keep in touch with some of my former staff to this day. Like, they tip pretty well with their tips. So, I knew they were in college. But one of the things that I learned, and I had a number of college students, and interestingly enough, I attracted Columbia students, Columbia University. Well, Columbia wasn't that far, but NYU students. So I'm like, wow, these, great colleges, and, they want to come here. They're coming uptown. They want to work for me. But one of the things, when hiring that kind of um, group is that there's a good chance that they may not last long because they are looking for the next dollar, which I can understand. You're 20, 21. Um, but I would say for those like who were there, short or long, when they were there, they gave 100%. And, one of the young ladies who worked for me, she ended up going to study abroad, which I encouraged her. I wrote her a recommendation letter. I felt like, you got to go see the world. This is great. When she came back from studying abroad, she called me right away and was like, can I come back to work? Um, so yeah, it was mostly college students in the beginning, but I found later that the ones who had a longer tenure were the more mature people.
Mm. That's great. That's great to know. So let's just pivot just a little bit about like your operations. So how did you what was some of the steps that you took to remain relevant during that time? What type of marketing did you do? It was the Harlem Tea Room. So what did you do to stay um, you know, alive during that time?
Sure. Um, I would do events, or I shouldn't say one thing, people would come to me, everyone had an idea. One of the things I would joke about was like, when I opened this cafe, I was so passionate about the tea and, the desserts. But then there were all these elements that came up. Like in the cafe, I had a little stage built.
Mhm.
It served two purposes. It was a stage if we had entertainment, but if there was no entertainment, it was a seating. You could sit up there. And I would joke with myself, like, I'm a booking agent too. People would come and drop off CDs. I play jazz, I sing. I'm trying to drop an album. Can we do poetry? And so I'm like, that was one of the things that I didn't, anticipate, but who was the decision maker? Me. So to answer your question about, staying relevant, we did do a lot of events. There was an event called Flow and Vibrations in Harlem,
Mhm.
and that was one Friday a month, and they had a great following. One of the things that I distinctly recall about the Flow and Vibrations in Harlem, it was like an open mic, spoken word, but it was all ages. You might have a 10-year-old come up and do a poem, and you might have the 80-year-old lady who lived around the corner who was so happy the business was there. And so that was on a Friday. So that, garnered people. Then there was Accenture, which was a spoken word event on a Sunday, one Sunday a month. And they had a really good following. A lot of people traveled from Brooklyn, from Yonkers for this. They even would bring in a band. So the band would play like in the background, and that was nice. And then I would do different events, catered to around holidays. um, and different things of that like.
Wow. So you really had like a focal point that you outlined with pretty much within your business plan that you wanted to have this directly connected to the community, which you were able to accomplish. So that's really key that you mentioned about the importance of having a business plan and making sure you're very clear and writing down what your vision is. So I really appreciate, seeing that full circle, how that played out.
Mhm. And one thing I would say to that point, with the vision, I remember a customer, and she was a regular customer. She would come at least once a week, and she would sit. And one day she said, "I have a question for you." And I said, "Sure." She said, "When are you going to add the burgers?" And I said, "Burgers?" She said, "Like hamburgers." And one of the things I was very mindful of, you have to listen to your customer. That doesn't mean you have to do what they say, but hear them out, be open. But my response to her was, I said, "Never." And she looked, a little confused. And I said, "But let me explain to you why. There's a place you go for certain things." I said, "There's a place you can go for burgers. There's a place you can go for fried chicken. This, I'm not aspiring to be a burger joint, and that's not in line with what we're serving here."
And so you were very clear from the beginning about your vision and sticking to it and staying in line with that and not being diverted, getting feedback, but not being diverted from the original plan, which is very interesting. Um,
Yes. But one thing I would add to that, it is a balance though.
mhm,
Um, for example, right, I had a clear vision, but probably about 2 years in, I realized that how I defined my vision was not sustainable. Selling tea and cake was not really going to pay the rent,
mhm,
or the employees. So I was open to how can I diversify my menu to bring up the average ticket price,
mhm,
um, but I still wanted it to be compatible. So, very early on, we added soup, salad, sandwiches. We had quiche. It was light fare. It's like
mhm,
still to this day, I shy away from saying I had a restaurant. It was a cafe restaurant. Yes, it's the same thing, but it was light fare. And different people, would come with opinions and would offer, like, you should serve this, like, you should offer this. And those things could have made the average ticket price higher. However, I was still trying to stay true to my vision. I didn't want to be frying stuff. You came in for one kind of aroma, like what we actually baked cookies. Cookies and milk was on the menu, and my staff would let the people know when they ordered that it takes 15 minutes for the cookies to bake. Just giving them a heads up. Or they would encourage them, like if they were having a salad or something, and they wanted cookies to they would put it in ahead of time so it could
mhm.
follow right after.
Right.
So, I tried to diversify, but still keep it in line with the vision.
That is great. That I actually would think about places that I've gone to where the food is made like homemade, like freshly prepared. There's something special about that home, like you sit in a space and it's like this home cooked feeling like you're waiting for like your mom or your grandmom or your dad to bring something to the table and you're like anxious about it and exciting and you can smell the variety of aromas. So I always appreciate when I go to places, and that is like one of the things because I'll sit there like I have no problem being that person sitting there waiting, and know not to go like hungry, like really hungry, so
Right.
then you become like that customer that gets kicked out. So they want that to be me. So um, so about business collaborations, what did that look like? Or did you do any, I know that you mentioned that um, your space was hosting a variety of different events. But what about other business collaborations? Like what did that look like for your business at the time?
Sure. One of the things I can say, and I, so appreciate, still to this day, was how I was welcomed into the business community. People were very excited. Other business owners would come, let me know if you need anything, just offer their support or let me know they're going to send customers my way. Offhand, I remember some collaborations. There was one that I did. Um, Another entrepreneur, she said this space would be lovely for a bridal expo. I'm like, bridal expo? Like, I don't have expo space, but okay. I'm again being open. And she says, no, we can call it the Harlem Bridal Show. You just add Harlem onto it. And so partnered with Barbara's Flowers, which florist shop in the neighborhood. She did beautiful bridal headpieces. We brought in two other vendors, and we had tables, and it was a really lovely event. And again, it wasn't, I'm not taking credit. It was not an idea, but again, I was open to the collaboration. Another great partner that I had, and it was so great, they sought me out, was Mac on 125th Street. The manager had reached out to me and said, we want to partner. And we partnered and we did an event where I actually took the tea shop to the Mac store. But she said, bring your flyers, bring different things so people know about you. And I did maybe like 4 or 5. Whenever they had some kind of special event, they would reach out and allow me to do the catering and partner with me.
That's great. So you were really thinking about, especially when things came to the table, about definitely connecting with some of your local business neighbors, and that was good for business and good for relationships as well. So that was great.
Yeah.
Um, to
One
mhm.
sorry, one business who he reached out to me, and I'm happy he's still in business today, Harlem Heritage Tours.
Mhm.
So we were actually, the tourism market was just starting to pick up in Harlem, and we created a tour package called Harlem Tea Tour. And so he would take them on a tour in Harlem, and then they would end up at the tea room for dessert and a snack. Um, and we didn't fully. We could have did a little more marketing with it, but I appreciated that he reached out to me saying, "Hey, I have this idea. This could work out really great, and I could get you exposure." And I end up putting that package on my website. So yeah, I think it's key to just be open to see where you can collaborate where it makes sense.
So yes, I you mentioned earlier in our conversation about angel investors. Do you want to share your story about your angels that came to help you out during your process?
Oh, sure. And just to clarify, they weren't angel because there's a term, angel investor,
Right now,
who are
yeah.
people who give money. Their name doesn't necessarily have to be on anything, but they're like kind of secret investors. Not that. I often refer that I had angels who would come offer help. And so, some examples of that would be like when I first was having the build out done,
Mhm.
someone referred me to someone to come and put a sound system in the place because they said, well, how are you going to play music? Oh, this is pre Bluetooth, pre little portable Bose speakers. Like I needed to wire the place. Oh, so I reached out to this person, and this person like had their own business, but they did wiring for major corporations. They did the wiring for Columbia University. Um, and when it came down, to it, I just said, "Oh boy, how much this is gonna cost?" He was speaking a language that I really didn't understand, just as far as technical terms.
Mhm.
But in the end, he's like, "Sis, I like what you're doing," and he's like, "No charge." I didn't know this man, and so that was one, angel. Um, Another one, which I've shared this story, maybe not as much, but there came a time where I wanted to add a beer and wine license because as I was evaluating the financial status of the business, I knew I didn't want a full on liquor license. One, liquor licenses in New York are very expensive, but I didn't want a full on liquor license because I was not trying to be a bar. However, kind of again keeping within the theme of the cafe, I figured, well, what if people want to have a toast, like a champagne? They're there for, a special occasion. Or what if a couple is on a date and maybe the man doesn't want tea, but he wants a beer, or vice versa. And so I have been trying to save and figure out the whole process. For anyone who's ever looked into a beer and wine license or a liquor license in New York, there's a whole process, down to like needing an attorney to, handle the paperwork. You can do it on your own, but it just helps to expedite things. There's a timing thing, costs. So fast forward, I was at my dentist appointment, and my dentist knew I opened the business, and she, started chatting with me how it was going. And she was so matter of factly said, you serve beer and wine, right? And I said, no, I don't. She's like, what? How could you not serve beer and wine? I said, well, I want to get the license, but I just need to have the money. I don't have the money right now. And she's like, oh no, we need to get you a beer and wine license. And she says, okay, well, I'm going to give you the money. And she said it like it was no big deal. And I looked at her like, no, you're not. I'm not going to take your money. She's like, nope, you'll pay it back to me. I will give you the money. And, but I liked how she said like, we have to get you this because this is going to help you be successful. And so when I was checking out, making my next appointment, her assistant said, oh, it says here on the chart that I'm supposed to give you some money. And I was not embarrassed, ashamed. I was overwhelmed, like, wow. And I mean, this is my dentist. And so I said, oh no, I'm not gonna, take any money. And she says, no, it says here. She goes, how much do you need? Like, just tell me the amount. So I'll just say it was several thousands of dollars. I will share, I'm proud that I did pay her back. But I have to say that that was a big help because my average ticket did go up. So, say if my average ticket was $10, in many cases it doubled to 20
Mm-hmm.
because some people would have the cake and tea or two pots of tea.
Mm-hmm.
But then as they're sitting giggling with their friends or just taking a moment, say, oh, you have wine? Can we have a glass of wine too? So it was helpful.
Mm. Wow. I appreciate you sharing that story. I know that that's rather personal, but it's often nice to hear when you have a business and someone is believes in your dream as well, and that they're willing, like they're so in connection with what you're believing, that they're willing to support you at all costs, just by on a basis of you expressing and being of good character as well. I think that that probably helped as well. So that's really a good story that you share, and I appreciate that. So
Well, no, and I would just add with that, it's not a story I've shared too often, but
Mhm.
in this, if I want to share information or someone who's aspiring to be, I think it's important to be, transparent, the good, the bad. But also too, it's such a blessing. It was such a blessing to me that, as we're having this chat, I think it is an important part of the story
Right.
because, there's days that were great and then there were days that's tough. And then, especially with it kind of being my baby, I was working so hard to try to make it work. And so, like I said, the angels really showed up. They did.
So, do you mind sharing what made you decide to close the business? What was your final, like, say we have to close the business?
So the main reason why I decided to close was it was really financial. Um, in that I really, as we were approaching year 4, so, I'm making my way. And I have to say, There were businesses that opened to the left of me, to the right. They closed. I really like one may I was open for 4 years. And for some that may not seem like a long time, but for the restaurant industry, it was a long time. And so I was felt like I consider myself a smart businesswoman. And as a smart businesswoman, you need to make smart decisions. So I really took a deep dive and looked at the numbers. I have been operating and so busy. And, one thing I always say that I pride myself on is that when Friday came, I paid my workers. I wasn't ducking or dodging anyone. They got paid. I may not have gotten paid, but they were paid. And, but when I sat back and was like, how much does everything really cost? Which is something you should know.
Mhm.
I shouldn't have been at that point and not known. I mean, like, the rent was getting paid. Con Ed, here goes the Con Ed bill. In New York for brick and mortar business, you have to pay for trash removal. I had the carting company bill. It was like everything was a bill. And so it really became when I realized that my product, at the end of the day, my product was not compatible with the overhead costs. My rent was high and my rent was escalating every year. So I had an increase every year from year one. And I felt like I need to reevaluate this. Like, this is not sustainable in the long run. And
Mhm.
it was at that point becoming more of a burden. Like, I was losing, I really love talking to the people. I love the day to day, but it was becoming more stressful.
Mhm.
And I, at that point, says I need to reevaluate. So I made the tough decision to close it.
And not to franchise or not to sell it off to anyone, but to actually close it.
Correct. So, and one of the things with that, and I lost a lot of money because the build out, again, back to the vanilla box that I put into building out the place. I had to put in an HVAC system. HVAC system is your heating, ventilation, and air conditioner.
Mhm.
That had to be built out. Well, you can't take it with you. I couldn't take it when I closed. Like, the next business that came benefited from a lot of what I built in the plumbing, the electrical. But I decided to close and not sell it because that was my baby. And I realized that I had a discussion with three different people who came and we were chatting about maybe me selling it to them. And I could not put a value on my baby. I just couldn't. And I also said that if I sell it and maybe come by and see that this place is like not the vision that I had, it will really break my heart.
Mhm.
So that was why I decided to just close.
Wow. I just need to settle on that because that's really something to think about. But you also mentioned early on in your discussion about within the business plan, making sure that you put in your exit strategy. I don't think, when you started that you were thinking that you were going to close 4 years later. I don't think that was it, but it was important. It was something very striking that you had that in there. Again, not to say that you were gonna be close,
Mhm.
like, you had
Right.
that idea, but that's something that I think that, even when I look at business plans now that the exit strategy isn't there. So that's really, really key and critical. So, um, I know that we're coming up on our hour, but I wanna make sure that, you leave the community with some 5 tips, and while you are, sharing your tips of experience. I wanted to just also say that this is an open discussion. So if you have any questions or want to plug into Patrice, please feel free while she's giving her tips. And I know that we have to type, so I wanted to just buy a little bit of time while we are wrapping up with final thoughts.
Sure. So yeah, I wrote down my five little tips. The first I would say is act with integrity with any business that you have. And when you act with integrity, I just think that all the good will come back to you. And one example of that is prior to me closing the business, I had decided like 3 months before. It wasn't just like you show up one day and the business is closed. I put a note on the front door. I put a note in the menu, and told my staff. And another business owner said to me, "Don't say anything. You will have a mass exodus, and then you're going to be left with no workers.
Mm.
But I felt like toward the latter part of my business too, the staff that I had, many of them were with me over a year, which doesn't seem like a long time, but in the restaurant business, that is.
Right.
Um, and and one of the people was there from day one. So I felt like I owed it to them. They have been loyal to me, honest with me. And so I told them. And I remember one person said, well, I'm going to be right here with you to the last day, where she could have, gone to work for someone else. But again, with the acting with integrity, but then also, too, when I was closing, another restaurant owner came and said, I know you've had some really dedicated, loyal workers. Can you put me in touch with some of them? So I actually was able to get to a job. They stuck with me to the end. And another thing, example with the acting with integrity, I was just like because I'm a people person, I care. Like, yes, it was business, but um, I felt like people were very good to me. I remember one of my workers saying, Patrice, did you see this? He held up $100 bill. And I was like, what is that? He's like, it's stuck right here in between your drawer. It was stuck in the register, the tray between the door. To be honest, I don't know how long that $100 bill was there. And to be honest, he could have taken it. And I may not have ever known, but he was honest. And so I say that to say, like, I just felt like people were good to me because I worked with integrity. I was honest and I was fair. Um, uh, the second tip I would say is, adjust your model um, as long as it's still within your confines. For example, the example that I gave about the burgers, be open. I remember there was a young couple, they were going to law school at Columbia. And the gentleman said, Patrice, there's no good place to have a bagel.
Mm.
Like, can we get some bagels? So, I had a vendor, I didn't do all the baking. And I said, okay. He says, I promise you, if you get bagels, I will come and buy a bagel every day. So I added the bagel. And guess who bought a bagel every day?
Mm.
But guess what? He was the only one who bought a bagel every day. So after doing that for, I don't know how long, maybe 2 months, maybe three, I gave him the heads up that I'm sorry, I have to take bagels off the menu. They're just not, bagels aren't selling. So be open, but you also have to be smart.
Mm.
Um, I would say the third thing is balance everyone offering their opinion. I had a lot of people come in, and maybe because I was a woman, I was young, a young woman, I was very honest. Like, I didn't come from this background. And I had a lot of people just come in and offer their opinion. And some people very generally nice, but some people trying to tell me what to do, how to run the business. And so I would say with that is that, keep rooted, like know your concept, be open, but you don't have to listen to what everyone's opinion. And then I say related to that, one thing I learned after closing the business is establish whatever kind of business, if you're interested in something entrepreneur, establish an advisory board. So for the last 4 years, I've been on an advisory board for this natural hair care company. And I didn't think about it when I had my business, but this advisory board, we meet and this person who owned this company discussed everything from packaging to social media to promotions during the holiday season. And we don't get paid. She may give us some hair care products, which is nice. It is a friend of mine, so I don't mind offering my expertise and time. But that could have been something that I could have benefited from because there were a lot of times that it was decisions that needed to be made, and guess who had to make them? It was me. I didn't have a business partner. I was the decision maker. I
Right.
mean, sometimes I would ask my family, but it would have been nice maybe to have an advisory board to run things by or to be that support. Um, and then I would say in this day and age, social media is a must. At the time I had the business, social media was Facebook was alive. I really wasn't that active on it because of time. But one thing I could say, and now it's just so prominent, the different mediums. But if you don't have time to do the social media, then hire someone to do it for you because it's critical. It is critical in this day and age. So those are my tips.
Hold on, I'm just type. I'm trying to type. I'm trying to type as you. I thought I was being quick. Being quick. If you can't do it, hire someone to help you. So I do have one question that came in from the audience: Is would you do it again, the Harlem Tea Room, or something like that? Now,
Yes, I have an idea of something else. I'm not disclosing yet, but yes.
yes, I'll follow you wherever you go. That's really exciting. Is there anything else that you want to share? Because that was the only question that came up. I'm just gonna lend for another opportunity because I know that we're in this digital space. I know that sometimes I've had people tell I'm sorry for typing too slow.
Oh, it's okay. I would say one last thing too is,
Uh,
you know, do your homework.
mhm.
Like know your competition, know the industry, know the challenges. Um, and that goes hand in hand with the business plan, but um, know your industry too. That's the key.
So hey Miss Deborah. Miss Deborah says, I love the Harlem Tea Room. I did too. I yes, uh,
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
sure. Decor, everything, service to me was just amazing. So just gonna give folks just a few more minutes. You want to just talk about some of anything else that you want us to know before we wrap up for this evening, or
Um, Yeah, I would say, well, on the note of kind of like what I have, um, you know, in mind for another brick and mortar type business, I think now I will share this part. I think it's a little more pressure for me than when I did it the first time because I have done it. And so to me, there's the pressure. Like it's like someone, right, who has their debut album, and then the second one is always like speculation and how's that gonna do. So with this kind of business idea that I have for this next go round, I just feel like I can't afford to for it to not be successful. One, I think because age and money, like I know how much, goes into this, but also just like you have to be smart. You have to work smarter. So that's why with this, even though I have my days like I'm gonna figure this out now, I am a little more cautious this time around. Like I really need to, you know, be as the you can't control everything,
right.
because there's gonna be some things that are gonna be beyond your control. But as much as I can be prepared, that's where I'm at now.
Okay, great. So I do see another question. Tamika, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. How did you balance personal life and business? Thank you for your question.
Oh, that's a great question. To be honest, it was tough. It really, really was tough. And I have to credit, like, have a great support network. My girlfriends, they would come to me, which, like, just when I think about it, I try not to get emotional. Like, your friends are going to be your friends. And the business, like, it just consumes so much of me. And so, like, I close on the weeknights at 9 o'clock. And so I would have dinner like after 9, but there would be days that they would be waiting outside so we could go to dinner. They would come to Harlem. Meanwhile, they lived in Queens, they lived in Brooklyn, but they would come to me. Um, the majority of the time when I had the business, I was single, and it was tough to have a relationship because it demanded all of my time. I dated some nice gentlemen, but I felt like selfish, like I really couldn't give because I had this baby, like I just didn't have time. Um, and then the other thing that I would say with the balance is that sometimes it could be lonely. Like people would see, like, oh, I saw you in the magazine, I saw you on TV. And that was great, but they don't know that part about, oh, the rent's due next week. Or, for example, in the summertime, the AC, my AC bill will go up to $1,500 a month. Like, and I can't have the customers hot, but it was just all those things. So it was tough, but I would say that I had a really great, support network.
And that's really I can definitely echo that. You have to have a very and the truth is everyone is not going to your dream, your vision is for you. But just knowing that you can kind of tap into folks when, things are kind of not are tough or, going well is really important. But it's also lending me to a statement that you mentioned earlier about having, an established advisory board to help you through, those critical ebbs and flows of business. So I want to thank you for that. So I see another question. How did you let go of controlling every part of your business, and how do you know when to get help?
That is a great question. And I
Mhm.
have to say, once I was able to let go of controlling every aspect, it freed me up. It freed me up to do other things. And I'll give you an example. When I first opened the business, because it was, cash, I mean, we took credit cards, but cash business, I heard such horrible stories about employees stealing from you. And, you got to watch the register. And so when I first opened, I wouldn't leave. So I would be there from the morning when we open at 9 o'clock to when we close. And at some point, the light bulb went on like, you can't operate like this. Like, you have to trust people. And if they're going to steal from you, if they're going to steal from you, they're going to steal from you. And if they're going to steal from you, hopefully eventually you would catch them. But one thing on the note of stealing, I do remember when I would interview people and hire them, I told them that I did have a trust system. But if I caught anyone stealing, I would have them arrested. I did. I was very like adamant about that. And I remember um, the refrigerator and the freezers came with locks. And I was so baffled, like, why is there a key on the refrigerator and the freezer? Again, not having worked in the restaurant industry. So one of the employees said, girl, you better lock this refrigerator up. I was like, lock it? Why? That's because people steal. And I said to myself, I am not locking this. Like, if somebody needs something that bad that they have to steal from the refrigerator, then maybe they need it. But it was when I was able to kind of take that approach, again, the blessings I didn't have. I have to say, in the 4 years, there was one person who I believe stole. I let them go, but it was another employee who said, watch your register. Why? And I was like, what do you mean? Tell me, And they just said, watch your register. And then I noticed we came up short 2 times, but coming up short 2 times in 4 years, like people were pretty honest. So I would say once I took that approach, like I have to trust, I didn't have to be there from 9 to 9. I could I could leave in the middle of the day. I could go for a walk. I could go get my hair done. And those were big things. Um, Another example of how I did, we would get a lot of requests for events. That was something I didn't touch upon.
Mhm.
That I could have operated on private events alone. That is really where the consistent money was. Meaning, if I booked a bridal shower or baby shower on a Saturday for 50 people, I knew how many I was getting, a guaranteed 50 people versus having the door open and wondering if 20 people were going to come in an hour. And that was a really big, tough balance because I would put up a sign saying we're closed for a private event from 1 to 4. Or we did a lot of baby showers, bridal showers. 2 people got married in the tea room. Um, People would rent it out for bereavement if someone passed away. So it was such a space. We hosted all kinds of events. And I apologize for veering off to that question, but
That's fine.
um, the bookings, the phone would be ringing. People want to book events. And I realized I was taking so much time doing proposals for the event or following up. And in some cases, I was so busy, I didn't get back in time, right? So you can lose the potential party, which I get. And I had a young lady who was the waitress, and she was so efficient. And I thought, you know what? Let me empower her.
Mm.
So I made her my booking specialist. Um, and what I said to her is, every party you book, you get 10%. Like I gave her, and and you have to be able to let that go. Like one might say, well, that's a lot, but guess what? The more parties she books, the more money she's motivated because she's making like this bonus. And I'm booking more parties and I'm making money. So you do have to be open to, you know, trusting. Like it's key to just trust people. And I think if you have a vibe, if someone just doesn't seem trustworthy, that's one thing. But if you have a supportive team, people you know who have your back, who are honest, then you can step back and also to utilize people where their skills are best. In this case, she helped book these events and she was very good at it, down to people calling was like, oh, Jenna was so lovely. Like, I loved hearing these compliments. Like, thank you. Or people, when they book the event, sometimes she wasn't always there. And they might leave a card for Jenna, like, thank you so much. So I was okay that I didn't have to have all the shine and all the credit. Um, so hopefully that answers the question.
I think it did. But if not, Ms. Deborah, please tell us in the chat. So, where could one find you on social media now? So that when you open up this new thing, we all want to be in the know. We want to be first to know. Sorry, we want. Okay, I want to be first to know. Besides the people that's closest in your circle.
So I'm on Facebook under my maiden name, Patrice Clayton. I'm also on LinkedIn uh, under Patrice West dash Biz Pro. Um, and then I am also on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Lady T for You. L
TE.
A T E A, the number 4 U.
All right, so we all gonna be in the know. Make sure you like and follow Patrice on Facebook, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. I am very thankful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to this wonderful audience and little old me from Brownsville, Brooklyn. I really appreciate you. It has been really good to get to like to once you know how you see someone and you're like, yeah, I kind of know, but then when you actually have a real a different conversation that you really get to know the heart of a person, and I can see why we all were like super in love with the Harlem Tea Room, and I can't wait to whatever it is that's coming next.
Mhm.
I don't care where you at. I'm showing up with my child, with my child. And if it's gonna be tea, my hats too. And Pinky.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed discussing the journey. And for anyone out there who has any questions, I'm always happy to, answer questions, share experience, give advice. So thanks for tuning in.
And Tasha says, let me just put Tasha up. She says, thank you for sharing your story, Patrice Clayton, with the exclamation point. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. And so I'm going to send you off with virtual hugs, Patrice, because I don't think we're going to talk again right now until after the holidays. So I, wish you and your family a wonderful remainder and safe of 2020. I think probably we are all looking for the change of the calendar right now. um,
Yeah.
but really grateful and sending you kisses, virtual hugs, and thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. Thank you, and I'm just going to populate this. It says,
Thank you.
well, she said, oh, you got the fan base. Oh, I see what's happening. I see
Hey,
what
Layla.
now. Oh, I see what's happening. Okay, y'all. Y'all want to show up. Y'all want to show up. Y'all want to show up, and we appreciate you.
Oh,
But
thank
stay
you.
stay tuned, and again. This is a real honor and blessing. So take good care.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
All right, take care.
Bye.
So again, I told y'all this is these interviews are getting, as they go on, they're getting more and more amazing, and I'm actually a student of everyone who comes on the show. And so I am really honored that you have taken the time out of in space to share with me. I am looking forward to having my final guest of this series on Monday, December 14th. It will be with the president and CEO of the Upstate New York Black Chamber of Commerce. So if you are around, if you are available, please stay tuned and check in. And make it a good weekend. Remain safe, sane, um, loving, encouraging. And if you are and have aspirations of becoming an entrepreneur, these are some of the journeys and the things and the conversations that we really should be having. Around our dinner table. And as we close for the evening, I want to just highlight a number of small businesses that exist on Instagram, on Facebook that I have done business with and think they are really amazing people and hope that you enjoy them too. And so stay tuned, just watch, check it out. And if you can, your schedule permits, join me on Monday. Make it a good weekend. Thank you.